What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. Yeah. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut. She says that I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I believe in G.O.D. Don't believe in T.H.O.D. She keep playing me down. I'ma play her for fun. You don't really know my mental. Let me give you the visual stencil. Hi, this is John Cullen. Welcome to another episode of Webb of Deception. This is episode number 23. And I'm joined again by my co-host, Jason Goodman. Jason, thanks again for taking time to help us figure out all this craziness and this web of deception. Great to have you here. And this show is number 23 in the Web of Deception series. And it seems that today or this weekend is the 7-year anniversary of the Port of Charleston gambit, we'll call it. And so I think it made some sense to revisit that, because that's kind of when everything kind of went off the rails, I think. And so there might be some people who didn't get to see the original Port of Charleston show that we did. It might have been episode 3 or 4 or something like that. So for those of you who are just catching on to the Web of Deception now, you can see the whole series. So we've got 22 episodes before this, both at my channel at either you go to youtube.com at I am on or youtube.com Johnny Hoover, either one will work. Or Jason, what you're at Crowdsource the Truth 27, 28? What are we up to now? Crowdsource what?
11 and 12.
11.
Yeah,
Crowdsource the Truth 11. All right, so Crowdsource the Truth 11. Or you guys can go over to odyssey.com / at Crowdsource the Truth. And you can see Jason's complimentary videos, the stuff that's available to everybody, and his subscriber-only content is over there at Odyssey or subscribestar.com / crowdsource the truth, or patreon.com / crowdsource the truth. So you can see this patron-only content that we've been doing. So imagine we did 22 shows so far. And each one of those 22 shows has at least an hour of patron-only content. Right? So we've done 25 minutes, half an hour, give or take, 22 times up until this show. And each one of those shows, we're doing over an hour of additional content that the patrons are really the only ones who've been privy to.
You need 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, often it's been an hour 20, an hour and a half. So it's always an hour, and oftentimes we go deeper than that. And it's the type of content that we can't share on the YouTube platform. There's just too many rules and stuff, and I think the challenge that we've had is they tend to change the rules often, and we're not aware of these new rule changes, and we end up breaking the rules without even knowing. I did that once. Remember when I showed the gun, and we got canceled right in the middle of the show? What did I do? I didn't know.
Treacherous.
I didn't know you couldn't do that. So I understand the rules, but it's easier that we don't break the rules and get ourselves in trouble. And Jason's up to Crowdsource the Truth 11 already. So the best thing is we're going to give you guys sort of the overview of what we're going to be talking about when we get to this patron-only portion. And for those of you who are not familiar, 7 years ago, Jason got drawn into what I like to call a gambit. You may have people call sandwiches that are long sandwiches. Some call them a sub.
Hoagie.
Some call them a hero, a hoagie in Philadelphia, right? By the way, if you go to like Denver, Colorado, and you order a hoagie, people look at you. You're out of your mind, right? And in a lot of cities, like if you go and order a hero sandwich, they don't know what you're talking about. They're going, "You mean a sub?"
It's like,
Right.
okay, yeah, where the hell you want to go? I don't, whatever, the long thing. So different
Yeah,
places have different terminology. So I call it a gambit. And this was when you had just started working with George Webb.
that's true.
And, this is 7 years ago. So why don't you take the audience back a little bit? For those, some did see the show, but let's refresh their memory. How did this even come about? Charleston?
Yeah.
Isn't it hot and muggy in Charleston in late June? Who was interested in Charleston in the first place? Were you guys going to some sort of
Well,
flapper
nobody
dance contest, or
actually,
was
at that time, nobody actually went to Charleston. So you're right. This is important to come back to because it was definitely a seminal event, and it's come up again in a recent court filing. We're going to have new information on this. So even if there's going to be a lot of people watching who maybe experienced the original broadcast. There's people even in the comments are saying this is where they first started watching Crowdsource the Truth with this whole Port of Charleston thing. But there's a new document that's a report from the Coast Guard that George's brother submitted in court. There is an incredible new twist to this. And
wow?
see, the funny thing about this show, John, is that it's the opposite of the show that you and I do on Friday nights, John Cullen Investigates, where that show, normally you just text me an idea, and then we create a graphic, and often I create that graphic not even knowing what the meat of your information is going to be. And likewise here, we just sort of suggest a topic that you know about in general, but I'm sure you're not necessarily familiar with each of the people pictured here or why I've made the thumbnail like this. So let's talk about it a little bit. You're right. This all began just really a few weeks after I met George Webb. I had seen George, just on YouTube, from watching YouTube. The algorithm, you're interested in this kind of stuff, and it sends certain videos your way. We've spoken about how I feel like it was a social engineering move to force a card, set up this channel about government conspiracies and see who starts interacting with that, and then start looking at those people, very much like Lee Harvey Oswald handing out flyers for the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. They're just looking at who is coming to that communist meeting and following those people. So, I started working with George, and George, we got into a little bit of a thing where he said, okay, we spoke about this. He says he's going up to get his rental car. It was parked up by his son's apartment, which was up by Columbia. So he was going to take the subway uptown, get his car, come back downtown here. We figured this is going to take between 90 minutes and maybe even 2 to 3 hours, depending on the subway, the traffic, a lot of unknowns there. But after 3 hours, it started seeming like a long time. So maybe 4 hours go by, and I call him or he calls me, and I'm like, dude, what's going on? He's like, I'm like halfway to West Virginia or something like that. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? We're supposed to go to D.C. together. And I got all pissed off. But remember, I started Crowdsource the Truth after my second divorce, after 21st Century 3D basically nosedived, and I was in a really kind of eating crow, being humble kind of period of my life. And rather than flying off the handle and getting pissed off, as people have seen I sometimes can, I said, you know what? Also, remember, I was trying to make a business out of Crowdsource the Truth because, yes, it's important that we bring people true information, but like anything else in modern society in the United States, people who want this stuff to be free, I don't think are real viewers. I think those are either Communist Manifesto people who want to, whose streets are streets and steal all our stuff and distribute it on Twitter for free, or they're just social engineers who want to destroy the effort. But you and I put a lot of time into this, and it was clear to me, even in the beginning, that if I didn't find some way to monetize it, I wouldn't be able to sustain it. And rather than taking advertising money or making that deal with Robert David Steele's friend Tyrone Simpson to be on Steemit, this direct to viewer sponsorship, really now there's a lot of people doing this, John. It was very cutting edge when I started doing it 7 years ago, and people did resist it because it wasn't really commonly done. People were selling vitamins or coffee or some kind of product, but people just want these videos and people want the information. So anyway, George, he basically screwed me over, and I was pissed off. And my instinct was to be like, you know what, dude, I've had it with you. we're done, and just start making videos by myself. But I just felt like people would have a bad impression of me if I broke this relationship with George, and that it would hurt my social media presence, and that it could be the end of Crowdsource the Truth.
Let me test my understanding here. You and George are getting ready to head down to Washington, D.C. together.
Yeah.
He's heading up to Harlem. You're in the Chelsea area because his son, has a pickup truck up there.
George rented a pickup truck, but he parked it up at his son's apartment for cheap parking or whatever. For days and days he's parking.
All right, so he's got the pickup truck up there. He's going to run uptown, maybe grab coffee with his kid, grab the pickup truck, come back down. You're packing up all your camera gear.
Yes. And clothes to be gone for days at a time or whatever we're doing.
And you're like, all right, I'll see you in 2-3 hours. You know, beep, call, text, whatever when you get back. And next thing you know, not only is he's halfway to West Virginia, he's having beers with somebody.
No. That's a different time. He said that his audience is freaking out and they don't like me, and so he decided to do this trip without me. And I said, wait a minute, man.
I'm confusing two stories.
I'm saying I thought your audience
and met Robert David Steele.
Well, that happened later. So first he leaves and he says his audience doesn't like me and blah blah blah. And I was like, listen, your audience are random people we don't know on the internet. I'm somebody who's working with you, that we have this kind of personal interaction here. What the hell are you doing? Like, I mean, again, John, you see how I work. I'm into building teams and making attractive situations that are mutually beneficial. I'm not into locking people into contracts and forcing people to work with me who don't want to. I'm into building mutually beneficial relationships with people that people want to be in it. So I just decided that, getting mad and telling George to screw himself was not strategically wise in this moment, because, there were still a lot of people who thought that I was just sort of like, the second fiddle and producing George's show. And to some extent that was true. I didn't have any experience investigating stuff, didn't really know Charles yet, hadn't gotten into all the researching of the nonprofits, hadn't done all of the counter lawfare stuff that I've done. So I was new in this area. And I just said, you know what? And also I had just gotten divorced, and I think you and I have certain personality traits that are similar, to the extent that sometimes there have been times in our lives, there might have been a moment where we said, maybe if I didn't get so angry right there and didn't say this or didn't say that, this might have gone differently. And I decided, let me just forgive the guy. Let me eat crow here and just get over this and not get angry. So then he was meeting with Robert David Steele. He's on the trip now. So he's in Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, West Virginia. And he calls me and he says, oh, do you want to have Robert David Steele on the show? I said, yes, we did that episode already. The next day after Robert David Steele. So he meets Robert David Steele in Virginia. Then he goes to West Virginia to meet Okie Marshall Richards. And at that time, I thought Okie Marshall Richards' name was Richard Stone. See, there's a couple of things about this, and we're going to get into this in the sponsor exclusive segment. We're going to look at this document. It's a public document. It's nothing secret or private. People can get it from Pacer. But we're going to go into this document that George's brother filed. It's a report from the Coast Guard that gives a lot of details about this incident in the port, some of which I didn't even know until I read this thing. And there's a couple of aspects of it that they're still trying to convince. He's filing this in court. And the crazy part about it is he's filed it in court in a FOIA case against Matya Benassi's husband. So, exactly what the hell is going on here? But you can see from the stamp right here, it's a FOIA case. It's filed in 2024, civil case 646. I think it's in Washington, D.C. We'll look at the docket, but this is an exhibit in his request for judicial notice of this South Carolina Civil Support Team, FBI Weapons of Mass Destruction Team. I mean, this was a big deal. We're going to go through all this, and take a look at exactly what went on here, and people can decide. I mean, I've been in communication with the FBI. I've been back to this Wando terminal. I've interacted with the police over there. Certainly, if there were any evidence that I had done anything wrong, I'm not hiding from the authorities. I've been trying to speak to them about this. But back to the thumbnail and how it all came about in the general sense of what we're going to talk about. You know, people have heard me say that I believe that this was a planned false flag. Remember, Robert David Steele has boasted about planning false flags for the CIA. He said, oh, but they were good false flags. Nobody died. So it seems like he represented someone who planned this false flag to create a social media incident about a bomb hoax in the Port of Charleston. And I believe the purpose of it was to get this big, huge FBI response. And also, by the way, they roll this type of thing into a resiliency test so they can sell it to all these different, whoever needs to say yes or no, you can do this, as we're going to test the response time of EMTs and fire and police. And what if there was an incident in the port? We're going to see where this is a penetration test to see our own weaknesses of the first responders of a national emergency. So from time to time, there are legitimate need to do this, right? Yeah. And so the side benefit of this is we also want to start censoring the internet. And so if we can, we don't care that Jason's going to, spend all his money and probably have to rely on his family to spend money to hire lawyers for millions and millions of dollars for the next, probably would still be in court, 5 years, 7 years, appeals. I'm still in court and we're just dealing with it from a civil standpoint. If I had been in jail this whole time or in and out of jail and going to court and my parents sitting there, the stress on my family, this is what they don't care about, is the lives that they destroy when you have,
This is important because as soon as you start talking about that, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to then provide evidence that powerful people in powerful positions are concerned about this. And I think when we get to the patron-only portion of the show, we'll hop over there in about, 12 minutes or 10 minutes. When we head over to the patron portion of the show, I want to share with the patrons the clip, not the whole thing, but maybe 2 minutes of Barack Obama speaking at Stanford University about the danger of misinformation, disinformation. Because this is what he was concerned about then. The meetings that these guys were having in the Oval Office was, if open source intelligence gathering gains any steam, we're toast. We are toast. So we're going to need to nip it in the bud, and that means you guys have got to find the earliest possible successful players out there. Find who is going to make a mark, and let's make an example out of them. And that was you.
Definitely. And also Alex Jones. It was a broad, effort that was underway. But I don't know.
I don't know that I'd put Alex in the same category as you. I'm having more and more suspicions about Alex.
Yeah.
As we've broken down this whole notion of the cognitive dissonance meets the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is one thing if you're a scientist, if you're a doctor, you put your reputation on the line, you put a paper out there. You're Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, you put out the Great Barrington Declaration, you get, your reputation's on the line. Alex Jones on the Las Vegas shooting, he didn't take a stand. He didn't say it was Tone Loc. He didn't take a stand, and now he's going to be wrong and embarrassed. So what kind of confirmation bias? In other words, for somebody like Alex Jones, there's really no excuse to not look at, for example, the Katie, Joanne, and Laura, the 3 women that were checked into the room. We've got it on the camera from the cops. I mean, this is not a theory. We have the recordings.
But doesn't it seem like somebody has handed this off now to, what's his name, Glenn Beck? They're getting all up into the story now.
What I'm saying
they're dishing these things out.
I think the people that we thought for years were the people who were trying to get to the truth may have also been the limited hangouts, because if they're avoiding key evidence so again, it's one thing if you're a physician, a doctor, a virologist, and we're talking about COVID, right? Your whole reputation, your whole career is on the line. And so to say I was wrong, it's easy for me. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm a cartographer, right? I didn't get the Hong Kong part wrong. So for me to say I was wrong about 1918 H1N1 or something, who cares? I don't care. What, people aren't going to come to my class at Yale? I don't teach at Yale, right? So it's not going to really have an impact. But with Alex Jones and the Vegas shooting, or Tucker Carlson in the Vegas shooting, or Joe Rogan in the Vegas shooting, why would you guys have confirmation bias?
Well, hang on a second. Keep in mind that with each of those guys that you're mentioning, somebody like Robert David Steele every day is trying to get them into some sort of position where he can force them to be on their side. For instance, Robert, while this was all going on, concurrent with all of this nonsense, this guy named Tyrone Simpson, he told me his name was Frank Bacon, but he called me up and he said, I work for Robert David Steele and you should do your show on Steam It and instead of on YouTube. And the idea was I was going to earn cryptocurrency. This was some kind of network, sort of like Rumble. If you put your show on Rumble and we give you 1 million Rumble subscribers and suddenly you're getting $5,000 a month from Rumble, you're going to like Rumble a lot. So that's what they were trying to do with Steam It. And so with Alex Jones, I get the sense that they broke his financial back, they got him over a barrel, and they got him into a position where I don't think they necessarily take you into a room and say, you have to do this. But when Flynn starts showing up and somehow that equals more viewers or money or whatever, you start doing more shows with Flynn and the narrative starts going that way. So that's basically what Robert David Steele was trying to do. He was trying to get me on the program where they could send me guests and they could control the flow of the show, and George would control it and Robert David Steele would control it, and whatever idiots they wanted to, Field McConnell, whatever idiots they wanted to put on the show would control it. But when their plan to get me arrested by the FBI by calling in a bomb hoax failed, then they immediately shifted to the lawfare plan, and that's why we have Stephen Biss back here. And just for the artificial intelligence fans, today's thumbnail, we've got an artificial intelligence enhanced Stephen Biss, because there's very little photography of this guy available on the internet, and haven't seen George's brother, in many years. Any pictures available of him are from years ago. People are asking if he's still active. He is every single day, and we're going to look at some of his court filings during the sponsor exclusive segment in about 5 minutes. But what I did here was, from available old images of David, I asked AI to make, X number of years later, give me an older looking version of him. So this is a simulated current photo of George's psychotic Nazi paperclip brother. And then, of course, all of these idiots appear to be working in service of General Flynn, or a plan that really focuses around General Flynn. I mean, John, I believe that each of these guys are nodes on a lawfare network. And this lawfare network, it's incredibly big. It's Ben Whitty's Lawfare Institute. It's all these different lawyers and, people who are PR firms that get hired by law firms, and then the contract. I mean, if you're a lawyer hiring a PR firm to help Harvey Weinstein improve his public image while he's in court, and that's absolutely something that gets hired, you might put on a Harvey Weinstein film festival, and the hiring of the curator of the film festival is something that a lawyer needs to do. So how do you find that person? The interaction between the lawyer and that person becomes an attorney-client privileged thing. So there's all kinds of weird stuff that can get launched out of these relationships with lawyers, and something amazing happened. I've been going as much as I can to this Felix Sater trial. Somebody saw an episode of Ghost Town USA that I did about Felix Sater, and his former attorney, Robert Wolf, has been being cross-examined Wolf is the attorney who signed the secret cooperation agreement with Andrew Weissman in 1998, along with Felix Sater. So it causes me to wonder, does Robert Wolf have some kind of maybe security clearance that he's interacting with the Department of Justice on these secret agreements? I don't know. But somebody pointed out that his daughter is an attorney at Ballard Spahr, the same firm that represented Chris Boozy and Eric Lichtblau in the Sussman prosecution during the Durham investigation. So it's a tight, I'm not just making it up that there's this lawfare network. It's a tight network, John.
Well, I'm really starting to wonder a lot about General Flynn and if his role is to be sort of the Pied Piper of the limited hangouts, because he's got the credibility, and again, remember when Trump came into office, when Trump wins the election in 2016, wasn't supposed to win, gets sworn in 2017. Who is briefing Trump on what is the status around the world? The head of the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, is going to brief President Trump on the situation in China. Mr. President, we've got a problem we need to tell you about. It's been going on for a couple of years. Have you had any egg salad recently, sir? Probably want to skip that, right? It's Flynn who updates Trump on what's going on in China from Obama. He's the one who has to explain to Trump, sir, Mr. President, the previous administration started a bio war with China, but we don't really.
Well, but did he tell him that, or did he lie to him?
I think he tells him because Trump starts Crimson Contagion and all that. In other words, it's not Trump knows what that was going on.
They know something's going on, right?
Right. So I'm wondering if he's almost like, is he a double agent? Is he a triple agent? Like, it's so hard to tell what side he's on. And my concern is he knows everything. Trump knows everything. And he is simply playing this role of Pied Piper of the alt world. And as you said, there's a million little branches off of him, right? I mean, come on, we not connected to this, but we saw photos of him with Mindy Robinson.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. He's all over this stupid. Exactly. He's all over this stupid LARP world, and I think this Port of Charleston thing was their early plan to, sell people on the idea of censoring the internet. So we're pretty close to our end here, John, and we're going to get into this legal
2017.
Yeah,
this was 2017. Yeah. So it was 7 years ago this week. June 14th, 2017.
Trump's birthday, by the way.
Trump's birthday and his first year in office. This is a transitional period. And when we go to the patron-only portion, I think Obama said the quiet part out loud at Stanford. He's telling you, here's what we're afraid of, because it's going to mean we're going to get caught. So I'm looking forward to getting over to the patron-only portion. We've got some very interesting things to share with you about Jason's interaction with the FBI. You're going to hear about that in just a few minutes. I'm John Cullen. Thanks for joining Web of Deception.
It's one small step for man. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. Yeah, what you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. She says that I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I believe in G.O.D. Don't believe in T.H.O.D. She keep playing me down. I'ma play her for fun. Don't really know my mental. Let me give you the picture falling out in the drought. No flow rain was pouring down. See that pain was all around. See my mom was kinda loud. Didn't know which way to turn. Flow was cool but I still felt burned. Energy up, you can feel my surge. I'ma kill everything like this burn.
One small step for man.
What you know about rolling down on the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion.